Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Misleading Mind: How We Create Our Own Problems and How Buddhist Psychology Can Help Us Solve Them, by Karuna Cayton. Narrated by Stephen R. Thorne. Introduction. To everyone who has ever gone to a therapist, bought a self-help book, consulted an astrological chart, or cracked open a fortune cookie in hopes of finding the answer or key to lasting happiness, The Misleading Mind offers a radical message. There is no key. There is no single answer that can be wrapped in a cookie. However, we can achieve lasting emotional health and happiness if we learn to train our minds. We each have the potential to alleviate our own suffering and embody our most wonderful, authentic self in each and every moment, but only if we learn to master the nasty tricks that our mind, by its very nature, plays on us. To put it another way, this book is written with the belief that every one of us has the potential to become an Olympic athlete in our mental development, but only if we train with the requisite intensity and drive. The Misleading Mind offers a powerful approach to our mental health. It takes the basic tenets of Buddhist psychology and methodically explores the nature of our problems and how they take root in our lives. Then, by training ourselves in the use of simple yet effective mental practices, we can gradually learn to identify the unhelpful thought patterns that contribute to our problems and solve them in the moment. We can, in a way, become our own therapists and spiritual guides. Learning to study and understand our problems on our own, taking firm ownership over them, and transforming them, and ultimately translating our new awareness into action in the world. In Buddhism, suffering is considered both a universal and a subjective state. Everyone suffers, and the causes of suffering are always internal. Modern psychology also sees unhappiness as fundamentally subjective, but the causes vary depending upon the theory. We suffer because of dysfunctional family systems, absent or poor parenting, early childhood trauma, environmental stressors such as a lack of safety, and so on. Yet where therapy tends to focus on solving immediate and specific individual problems, becoming complex and highly personalized, Buddhism seeks to address the nature of problems themselves, and thus its techniques serve everyone. The more we explore, understand, and even come to appreciate our own self-destructive mental attitudes, the more control we gain over our minds. As we train ourselves to look inward, we will understand how we continually thwart our own well-being by engaging the feelings and thoughts that cause us pain. And by teaching our minds how to engage and resolve destructive feelings and thoughts head-on whenever they occur, we can increasingly, and perhaps even permanently, alleviate suffering from our lives and realize our true potential. This book is a set of ideas and tools so we can begin the gradual process of becoming happier by directly engaging our problems. This happiness is much different from and independent of the external pleasures we usually seek to make ourselves feel better, such as drugs, medications, exercise, diet, sex, relationships, career, food, travel. Each of these may make us happy for a time, but they are only temporary salves. They almost never solve our problems, and they often end up creating more. However, while there are no guarantees in life, I will make the following promise. If you listen to this book, contemplate its ideas, and sincerely practice the techniques it offers, Even if you don't try or agree with everything, you will derive a long-term practical benefit that will help you alleviate your own suffering and that you can rely on for the rest of your life. A Buddhist Psychology. The ideas presented in this book are rooted in over 2,500 years of experimentation, testing, application, and success. For this reason alone, they are worth paying attention to. In the pre-modern era, Buddhism found success in such diverse cultures as India, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, southern Russia, Japan, Indonesia, China, Tibet, and other cultures. I believe one major reason for this is because Buddhism uncovers universal truths about the nature of mind. While these truths are central to the Buddhist religion and to Buddhist spiritual practice, their application and usefulness extend to everyone. They have long been recognized as a system of psychology, and as a psychotherapist, I've used Buddhist ideas about mind with my therapy patients with great success. Interestingly, even though modern psychology is comparatively very, very new, as a field, it is still in a state of change, of finding itself. Many people, particularly in North America and Europe, feel much more comfortable dealing with their emotional problems employing this new system of thought. This book, then, seeks to present the essence of Buddhist teachings about the nature of mind, or Buddhist psychology, so that anyone can use them. There is no religious dogma to follow, and no need or desire for one to become Buddhist in order to apply these ideas and achieve a highly purposeful and rich life. When we experience emotional pain or suffering, both modern therapy and Buddhism urge us to engage our difficulties, rather than run from them, deflect them, or cover them up. Only by dealing with our problems can we solve them. Yet modern psychology and Buddhism approach problems in subtle, yet crucially different ways. Therapists tend to treat problems as obstacles to happiness. We work with therapists to get rid of our problems so we can get back to enjoying our lives. Much of Buddhist thought encourages us to embrace our problems like old friends. It even encourages us to seek out our problems as a way to train our minds and to break free from the control of our disturbing, but sometimes unseen, emotions. Great practitioners like the Dalai Lama even claim to enjoy problems because, like our best friends, problems honestly and accurately reflect ourselves back to us. There is no clearer measure of our interior health than the nature of our problems. This shift in perspective regarding our problems is one of the keys to this book. As we develop a different relationship with our problems, we solve them in new ways, and we truly become able to heal ourselves. To clarify, being friends with our problems does not mean we accept them at face value or wallow in them. Rather, we use the opportunities problems offer us to think in new, more successful ways, thus becoming freer, happier, and more mentally balanced. As we become more aware and develop our understanding of the mind, we will begin to notice that we have actually already befriended our problems, or our negative emotions, and we have often let them become a bad influence on us. These friends control us and lead us to make the wrong choices. In our minds, as in life, some friendships are destructive. For example, those friends who entice or cajole us into bar hopping every night and into always drinking more than we should. As some already know, there are friends who willingly aid and abet our addictions and worst tendencies. These types of friends may flatter us and promise us all sorts of fun, but they are dishonest. A true friend honors and encourages our best self, and they will work at saving us from self-destruction, even if that means being difficult. So it is with our problems. They are difficult, but they are honest, like good friends should be, and they provide the exact support and help we need to liberate ourselves from the control of our negative emotions. Another important aspect to the Buddhist approach is that all happiness and suffering is a state of mind. We always have the power to heal ourselves, because the only way to eliminate suffering and achieve lasting happiness is by changing the way we relate to our mind. Nothing in the external world can affect this type of positive change. No career achievement, material possession, social status, or loving relationship. Make no mistake, all of what has been discussed so far can support a happier lifestyle. They can assist us in having a more directed and successful life. Nor do we need to renounce our creature comforts and live like a monk in order to heal our mind. However, pleasures and worldly accomplishments can easily become distractions, and we often treat them as ends in themselves. When this happens, we often find that our sense of satisfaction diminishes and our unhappiness increases. Lasting happiness requires a long-term approach. We can't permanently prevent or alleviate the conditions that lead to depression, anxiety, addictions, or eating disorders solely by taking this pill or changing that behavior. Rather, we need to develop a deep awareness of the way our problems arise, their root causes, and then we need to train ourselves in how to cope with them every time they come up. Like physical exercise, this is something we need to do throughout our life every day if we want to stay in shape. There are no shortcuts, nor is this about religious beliefs or backgrounds. It is nothing more or less than gradually evolving an awareness of our self-destructive tendencies from the inside out. Some might be thinking about now, this sounds like a lot of work. My problems aren't actually all that bad. I'm sure if I just adopted a more positive attitude, I could solve them better. Indeed, modern therapy often encourages us to cultivate a positive, optimistic approach in order to minimize and overcome our problems. And I certainly believe we should feel self-confident that we can handle any problem life throws our way. I don't disagree with this, but I do find it incomplete and insufficient. Here's why. If we are ignorant of botany and don't know how to distinguish plants, our happy garden will eventually be overcome by weeds. We will spend all our time frantically pulling up the plants we don't like, and lasting happiness will elude us. If we never figure out how to stop weeds from growing, they will always keep appearing. In other words, a plucky attitude may keep us going, but it doesn't solve the underlying issue, which Buddhism maintains is rooted in our very conception of self and mind. How we think about our mind and its functions is faulty, and so we have developed habitual mental patterns and conditioning that, if left unchanged, will always undermine and overwhelm a mere positive attitude. It also means that solving any individual problem amounts to nothing more than a quick fix, unless the root cause of our human dilemma is also tackled head-on. And what is our human dilemma? That the nature of life is problematic. Problems are not an exception, they are the norm. The world offers recurring and seemingly endless conundrums for us to deal with. These dilemmas arise for each and every human being, and they arise again and again. We cannot stop problems, but we can end our suffering, and we can achieve true, lasting happiness by understanding the nature of our mind and changing the way we approach our emotional struggles. A Buddhist therapist. Some years after opening my private psychotherapy practice in Santa Cruz, I was driving with my primary spiritual mentor, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Accompanying us was Choden Rinpoche, an elder lama, a title usually reserved for a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, typically a monk or nun, who was one of Lama Zopa's teachers. I was driving these two esteemed teachers to my new office in order to consecrate it. Consecrating new buildings when moving into a new location is a typical practice among many traditional Eastern cultures. As we were driving, Lama Zopa, almost out of nowhere, made a statement that would shake the foundation of my professional life. He was casually asking me about my work when, deliberately, he stated, "You know, if you're just helping people feel better, there is no benefit." At that moment, for me, the floor dropped out. I almost felt dizzy. I saw a flash before my inner eye of every client I had worked with for the past several years. I saw the numerous teenagers in crisis, parents in distress, couples in tears, and individuals in confusion and pain. And I wondered to myself, if there is no benefit in just helping people feel better, had I been beneficial at all, ever, in my professional work? I felt distraught. The more I thought about Lama Zopa's statement, the more quitting my profession seemed to be my only recourse. But what did Rinpoche really mean? Lama Zopa's statement for me seemed to catalyze the dialogue about the fundamental difference between modern psychology and Buddhism. While we continued with the consecration, the impact of Lama Zopa's statement resonated and percolated within my being for months to come. In fact, I continue to be both guided and troubled by it. Immediately afterward, I thought long and hard about Lama Zopa's use of the word benefit. I knew that Rinpoche was speaking to me personally and was not necessarily making a sweeping judgment of Western therapy or modern therapists. For a Buddhist master like Lama Zopa, the concept of benefit has a very particular definition. Benefit in the Buddhist context means lasting, long-term, enduring mental benefit. As a mental health professional, I was, by definition, concerned with my clients' mental well-being. As a Buddhist, Rinpoche was challenging me as to whether or not I was focused on my clients' lasting, long-term, enduring mental health. I felt that Rinpoche was wondering if I was making a stand by being true to my beliefs about the true causes of happiness, learned from my years of study in Buddhist thought. In other words, was I being courageous and authentic to my values and philosophy of happiness? Sadly, at that time, the answer was less than a resounding yes. Since then, I have steadily recalibrated my therapeutic approach as a way of getting to yes. I first began studying Buddhism when I was 21 and attended an intensive 1-month meditation and teaching retreat at Cayton Monastery in Nepal. That was in 1975, and I continued studying and retreating until I left Nepal in 1988, some 14 years later. Upon settling back in the United States, I have until this day, despite raising 3 children and pursuing a career in psychology, continued to study with Tibetan Buddhist masters and to engage in Buddhist practice. I have also studied and practiced psychotherapy since the 1990s, graduating from university in 1992 and opening my private practice in 1994. It's safe to say that merging these two psychological practices, or systems, in order to bring long-lasting, long-term, enduring mental health benefits to others, has been my life's work and mission, and it is the purpose of this book. Mind Training and Thought Transformation. In this very moment, we have the potential power within our mind to transform our ordinary, mundane, problem-riddled life into a life of ease and contentment. We can transform the nature of our problems and thus get rid of our problems. But for this method to be effective, it needs to be based in an accurate understanding of how problems arise, their causes, and their makeup. We must strive to understand our mind and how problems arise so that we can then develop the skill to transform these endless problems into happiness. How do we develop this skill? Through practice and training. Understanding is not enough. The idea of training the mind may sound a bit foreign or new. Remember Jack LaLanne? He changed the world of fitness when he began hosting his television show in 1951. Prior to that, the idea of toning and training the body was reserved for a few muscle men, athletes, and soldiers. LaLanne promoted the idea that anyone could get extraordinary results from training their bodies, and since then it's become common practice. For example, in 1951, how many ordinary people were running 26-mile marathons? Today, tens of thousands of people train regularly to develop their bodies and accomplish athletic feats that were pretty much unheard of 50 or 60 years ago. Like the body, the mind, too, can be trained. In fact, I believe the body has limitations on what it can achieve no matter how much we train, but the mind's potential is unlimited. In contrast with the West, mind training has a rich history in the Buddhist tradition. It reaches all the way back to the Buddha, who created these principles and techniques, which have been preserved through an unbroken lineage of practitioners to the present day. Buddhists train the mind to increase its discipline, strength, and discernment. An untrained mind is like a young puppy running wild through the house, soiling the furniture, and, despite its playfulness, upsetting everyone and ruling the roost. Training the mind is also how you acquire the skillful discernment to understand the nature of your problems and solve them effectively. As this occurs, you get mentally stronger, literally more fit and capable. There is a Tibetan proverb that says, "Don't put the load of a zhou on a cow." A zhou is a female yak, and yaks can carry a lot more than cows. In other words, you can't expect an untrained mind to handle life's biggest problems. But like the proverbial 98-pound weakling from the 1950s, you can train yourself by using small problems as dumbbells to build your mental muscles until there's nothing in the world that can bully you. As such, this book is organized and focused on getting you training right away. The first chapter discusses the nature of problems, and Chapter 2 describes the essential techniques that you will use to train your mind. These techniques are used throughout and can be applied to any situation. At first, though, honestly and appropriately assess your own capabilities and focus initially on those easier problems you feel ready to handle. You'll soon see the results and find you can tackle weightier issues each time. The next 5 chapters, chapters 3 through 7, look in more depth at the central Buddhist concepts that inform this approach. These chapters present our faulty thoughts and how they are transformed so that we can achieve lasting happiness. We will examine the nature of mind, our disturbing emotions, how we create our own self-defeating stories, the lessons of impermanence, and the true nature of self. In each of these chapters, I provide more exercises that you can use to expand and improve your training. Chapter 8 looks at the various distractions and ways that we often undermine our own efforts at self-improvement. And Chapter 9 ends with the most important practice of all, compassion and good-heartedness. When we understand the real culprit that prevents us from being fulfilled, the not knowing of how the mind functions, we cultivate a transformative compassion for ourselves and others. Through these investigations, we learn that the mind is lucid and pure. We learn that the myriad disturbing emotions, like fear, self-loathing, obsessive thinking, agitation, anxiety, depression, and so on, are like clouds that move across the sky of the mind. And we learn that, through training, we can cultivate a point of view that is less sticky to our emotions, and thus continually develop a more refined state of happiness. The concept of using problems to get rid of problems may sound new. It is interesting to note, however, that if we honestly assess our own good qualities, those we have developed over our lifetime, we might be surprised to see that they have invariably arisen through meeting hardship, pain, and struggle. Our problems and struggles are, in fact, our own best guide when we apply the right perspective. It is our perspective that is the problem, not the external events and interactions that come our way. We are a society of quick fixes, but when it comes to happiness, easy answers don't suffice. They only address our problems at a symptomatic level. We must have the courage and patience not only to become familiar with our underlying neuroses, but to engage, enjoy, celebrate, and appreciate them. Then our problems change shape, or, to use an analogy expressed by some ancient Buddhist masters, they become ornaments we can wear. We need to slow down and take an honest look at our unhelpful thoughts and emotions. The results will surprise us. No matter how serious and intransigent your problems seem, the misleading mind will prove transformational, the first step on a long but fulfilling journey to your own best self. Chapter 1. So, what's the problem? When I was 19 years old, I once worked for my brother-in-law, Scott, when he was the manager of the installation department at a vertical blind company. A hard-working Midwesterner, Scott had big goals. He wanted to be successful and move up the corporate ladder. As for myself and my best friend and co-worker Dave, we were in it for the short-term gain, some extra cash to pay for weekends spent partying and surfing. Dave had long, stringy blonde surfer hair. I had an afro. Together, we wore the uniform of the 60s counterculture, baggy blue jeans, blue surf shoes, and a solid-color pocket T-shirt. Dave always looked like he had just climbed out of bed, having slept the night in his clothes. One morning, when we were receiving our daily orders from Scott, He asked us to mind the office for a few minutes while he ran out to do an errand.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?